Good morning and welcome to Face the State. I'm Fred Pfeiffer. An extra special treat on today's program, a glimpse into the life of CBS feature reporter Steve Hartman, who travels the country guided by a dart in search of people with a story to tell. We caught up with Steve in Ekalaka, Montana, the end of October.
You've been back many times, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm thinking of buying a home here in Montana. This is my 5th time back to Montana.
Does Montana hold the distinction of having the most visits or not?
No, Texas has had the most visits.
Everybody has a story. They have 7. Montana is in 2nd place now with 5, tied with Kentucky of all places.
We're going to talk a little bit more about your series in a moment, but first I always like to find out people's background and how they got started and what they're doing. Where are you from, and tell us a little bit about your family.
I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I was born and raised there. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, all boys. My mother was a school teacher. My father worked for the Ford automobile company. He worked sort of in a not a blue-collar job, but not a white-collar job. It was kind of in between, did quality control. So it was a middle-class family, and it was a great life.
At what point do you think that you wanted to get involved in television or writing or journalism? Was this something that came early in your career or young life?
It's funny why you pick what you want to do with the rest of your life. And in high school, my favorite teacher was my high school journalism teacher. So when you go off to college, it's like, I don't know what to declare as my major, so I put down journalism because he was kind of a good teacher. And I never changed it. So that's kind of why I'm here today, just because I couldn't think of anything else. And I didn't want to really work for a company. I didn't want to, when all was said and done, think, well, he made a lot of widgets. You know, I wanted to do something that felt a little more important to me. And this is what I came up with.
You don't just walk into the position you're in. How about your professional background, and how did you get started?
Got a great internship right out of college where I was actually in college, junior year in college at the TV station in Toledo, Ohio. They would put interns on the air. They since discontinued that practice when one of the interns got the vice president's name wrong, but that's another story. But it was a really good internship, and it was a foot in the door. And from there, I started reporting in Toledo, and then I moved up to Minneapolis doing local news there, and I went to New York City and did local news there, and eventually, you know, to make a long story short, ended up at CBS.
At a young age, do you feel fortunate that you've made that step in such a short amount of time?
I feel fortunate that you think I'm at a young age. That's nice. I'm actually 39 years old. But I feel very fortunate to have the job that I have, to be able to work at CBS News, something, you know, every young reporter dreams of doing. And it's been a blessing.
Why feature reporting? It seems like that's been most of your career, hasn't it?
It has. Ever since the beginning, I always really wanted to do the last story in the newscast. While all the other reporters were competing for the first story, the lead story, the fire, the murder, I wanted to do the Cabbage Patch Doll's birthday party or whatever it was that was going to kick the end of the show. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it was more of a creative outlet for me. I didn't like having to compete with all the other reporters. I sort of like being on my own and covering stories nobody else is covering. Which certainly, when you throw a dart at a map of America and pick somebody at random out of the phone book, NBC's not right around the corner to tell the story. You know, you're on your own.
Maybe we could talk about how this idea came up. Throwing the dart somewhere and actually going to that location. How did you come up with the idea?
Well, there's a newspaper reporter in Lewiston, Idaho, who's been doing this for about 20 years now, picking people at random out of the phone book and doing a story on them for his local paper. And I'd done a story on him and this crazy, I thought, stupid idea he had of picking people at random out of the phone book and thinking they were newsworthy. And so we did a story on him, and then as part of that story, I tried it myself. We threw a dart at a map of America. We went to that place, picked somebody at random out of the phone book, and told their story. And it turned out to be quite a remarkable story. And CBS said, you should try that again. You should try that again. And we're now in '93.
We'd like to show folks who maybe have not seen your work, maybe we could show a sample of a gentleman from Roundup, Montana. Tell us a little bit of background on this.
Well, this is a fella. We were here, this has been about a couple years ago. And it was winter, and we came to Roundup, Montana. I don't know if I'd been that far up north in Montana before in my life. And once again, we picked somebody out of the phone book who said they were not boring, and they didn't have a story, which happens quite often. But as in this case, you know, he was wrong.
Every time I go to a town,
This is it right here.
find a phone booth, pick a name, no matter who I get,
John Racky.
they always give me the same disclaimer.
My life is not really exciting. We have a boring life.
And every time, for at least a little while, I believe them. But I've learned if you just dig deep enough into a person's past, you always find something interesting.
I think that briefcase is still missing.
Or in this case,
It's out there with Jimmy Hoffa someplace.
incriminating.
Does that look familiar?
When he was 16, John Racky stole that briefcase from this man, the Roundup High School accounting teacher. The briefcase was later found and returned to the teacher. That's him. But there's still one piece of paper conspicuously missing.
Where's the answer key?
And that was just one of many pranks. John spent an inordinate amount of his childhood in the principal's office. Even had his own chair there.
Yeah, he was there a lot, I guess, a lot more than we knew about.
His mom says if it wasn't bad conduct, it was bad grades.
He just didn't give a darn.
John graduated at the bottom of his class and went on to work as a roughneck in the Montana oil fields. Until one day, a piece of drilling equipment broke loose, gashed his head, and apparently knocked some sense into him. After the accident, John was physically unable to go back to oil drilling. So at the age of 28, this legendary high school slacker did something that surprised even him. He went to college, got 2 degrees, and eventually landed a job at... You're going to think I'm making this up.
Hey, BJ. That's Jackie.
John Racky is now the special ed teacher at Roundup High. He works with mentally disabled kids and other students who are just plain struggling.
I can help you with it also. I had some difficult things to learn when I was growing up, and I guess my job, I feel now, is to help young kids not make those same mistakes.
He's done wonders for my life. He's changed my life around.
14-year-old Joey Bykonen is fairly new here. Last fall, his mom put him in this school and put him in foster care because he was such a discipline problem. His grades were atrocious. And like John before him, Joey was becoming all too familiar with the principal's furniture.
Right there, that chair, right there, I know that chair. I just need help with a couple of them.
They've now been working together for 5 months.
You're doing a great job on this, Joey.
He knows that you got the potential to do anything, and he'll do anything in his power to help you.
Final answer?
Yeah.
He worked. Every day he busted his butt because Joey had a goal. There was something that he wanted to do. He wanted to go home.
And, as fate would have it, he will. Today.
I'm going to go say goodbye to Mr. Racky.
Joey's grades are now so improved, his attitude so radically shifted, that he no longer needs to be here.
You know, I felt a severe loss, but at the same time I feel a great pride. Not for me, because I didn't do it. Joey did it. Good luck, buddy.
And there goes one lucky young man who will not have to learn about life the hard way.
See you later, Joey.
Thanks to an old roughneck who turned out to be an old softy. Steve Hartman, CBS News, Roundup, Montana.
Steve, that gives people an idea of what you do and how much fun you have with it. What was it like when you were finished with the product? Were you pleased with it?
I was very pleased with it. John was a little embarrassed, I think, that, you know, all of his students knew that he once stole the briefcase, but he's gotten over that. Just, you know, and he's a remarkable guy, and it was just so nice to meet that family, and we're still in touch with them. And as is always the case, you know, you're just so grateful that you had a chance to really get to know somebody and see what they're all about and be able to tell their story. It's quite an honor.
You arrive in a community like here in Ekalaka, you put your finger on somebody and you call the phone. What do you say to these people?
I have the same spiel that I've said probably, you know, hundreds of times. Even though we've only done 94 stories, sometimes I have to do the spiel several times because we do get turned down quite often. Not necessarily in Montana. For some reason, people in Montana are like, CBS News wants to do a story on me? Sure, come on over. They're very inviting. But it's not that way everywhere. Sometimes it takes a while. So the spiel I go through is, this is Steve Hartman. I'm from CBS News, and I have a crazy story to tell you, but I want you to hear me out. And then they go, okay. And I say, I do this segment for CBS News where we throw a dart at a map of America, we go wherever it hits, and we pick somebody at random out of the phone book and do a story on them, if they're willing, of course. And our dart hit here, and we picked you. What do you think? And at that point, I can usually tell right away if they're going to be agreeable to this. If they are, you know, cold, And certainly if they hang up on me, I have a good clue that they don't want a story done on them. But if they're really like, really, you picked my name out of the phone book? That's amazing. Then I can kind of tell right then. Les and I kind of nod to each other. Les, the cameraman who does these stories. And we go, this person's going to say yes. And if they say yes, then we spend a couple days with them, finding out what their story is, and then telling it.
We were fortunate enough to meet you here at Ekalaka and get to see you go through that initial meeting on a Sunday evening. Is that pretty much the pattern that you do? You get together with the people early on?
Yes.
We usually spend the first night just figuring out what the story is. Most reporters, when they set out on a story, they know what the story is. They know about 90% of it. Oh, there's a fire at 4th and Main, and the building's been evacuated. You know a lot of the story before you show up. I don't know anything. All I know is their name in the phone book, and I know their phone number. But other than that, I'm starting from square one. And so the first night, we just get to know them and get a feel for what might be interesting or what viewers might be able to relate to, ideally, or ideally, even better, learn something from. And so we spend the first night doing that, and then over the next 2 days, we follow them around, sit them down. I tell them it's going to be like if Barbara Walters walked into your house and sat you down for an interview, lights and all that kind of thing. And as in this case, usually people are, they have a lot of fun with it.
Let's go to another piece that was done here in Montana, and this one along the Rocky Mountain frontage showed a little background on that.
Okay, this was a rare example for me. Somehow I ended up at the very back of the phone book. This is a Z. I don't get to too many Z's. I also don't get too many A's, but we got a guy named Zwerneman. And he had a story that I felt was really uniquely Montana.
First thing I always do when I pull into town is find a payphone, which is how I ended up in Katie's bar. Katie once bet a guy that if she couldn't quit smoking, he could turn her artificial leg into a lamp.
Are you making that up?
I am not making it up. That is my true leg. I came to Montana on that leg. I walked in this bar the first day on it.
But as much as I would have liked to explore that story,
Oh, if only we could fudge this.
my stories must always come from here.
Craig Zwerneman.
How are we going to top that, huh?
37-year-old Craig Zwerneman lives with his wife Janie, their son Trig, their daughter Ellie, and their cat Polly. And although Craig doesn't own anything nearly as unusual as an artificial leg lamp, he does own some fine art sculptures. And these tell the story of Craig's greatest gamble.
For me, I knew the second I started that this is what I want to do the rest of my life.
Craig's passion, and what used to be his business here, is bronze casting. An artist would send him a clay sculpture, and then Craig would make it into bronze. He opened the business 6 years ago, investing most of his savings.
And then when we wanted to advance, the dream was pulled away from us.
Craig says it just got to the point where he needed to expand to survive. He went to a couple different banks asking for help.
Did you get the loan?
No. Here we had a business plan, 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. They open it up to your financials. They don't care about how you started, what you're doing, what you're providing, and everything else. They never gave me the chance to fail. They were failing me before I even started.
Then, more or less as a last resort, Craig came to this little one-branch country bank. Just like all the other banks, they crunched the numbers and found Craig's loan to be an iffy proposition. But then Dutton Bank did something unusual, especially in this day and age. They considered one other factor that you won't find on any line of any form at any bank in America.
Character does count. Reputation counts. Family values count.
Pete Akegrin is on the bank board.
And we do take those things into consideration.
I want to spend some money. I hear that's what it's for.
By all accounts, Craig is a real stand-up guy. The kind of guy who, even when he was working 6.5 days a week, still wouldn't miss the important stuff, like seeing the front row pumpkin in the school play. And that's at least partly why, $180,000 later,
Big Sky Bronze,
Janie and Craig Zwerneman are back in business. Last month they moved into their brand new 4,000 square foot foundry.
Totally believe that those kids are going to do well. And if they don't, It won't because they didn't try.
The only way that this is going to fail, they're going to have to just kick me out. I will not walk. I will not walk away from it.
And around these parts, at least, those are still words you can bank on. Steve Hartman, CBS News, Teton County, Montana.
It's funny, that story, I think people from Montana and from small towns don't think that's much of a story. Well, bank, gave the guy a chance. But for big city folks, that's really unusual. And that's another thing that's really nice about this job is that so often news covers New York and L.A. and Chicago, Miami, but rarely do we get to places like Montana. And it's nice for folks in the big cities to see what it's like out here. And that's one of the things I like about that story.
Probably an obvious question would be, how distracting is it for you as a CBS reporter to come into a community like Ekalaka or anywhere else and not be the story instead of the person? Is that distracting?
It doesn't happen too often. It's not like, it's just Steve Hartman coming into town. It's not like Dan Rather's coming in or Mike Wallace, so it doesn't make too big of a splash. And generally people, they get into it. They realize that, okay, this is my moment. I'm here to tell my story, and I'll never have this opportunity again, and it doesn't become distracting that the news crew's there. Now, that said, sometimes the local paper will do a little story on us, and they'll interview our subjects. What was it like when CBS News showed up out of the blue? You're sitting at home, and now you're the focus of a major national news story. And but that's kind of exciting too. It's such a whirlwind for these people when we show up, that they have us there, and then they're in the local paper, which normally would be a big deal. I'm in the local paper, but now it's a local paper. It's CBS News, Dan Rather doing a story on me. So it's always very exciting, and we've done 94 of them now, and it never gets old.
You've changed the map, I understand, a little bit.
Yeah, we changed the map a little bit. I hope people understand that, on a traditional map that you buy at the store, Alaska and Hawaii, the size of them is kind of arbitrary anyway. Alaska's much smaller than it is in reality, and Hawaii's generally much bigger. So what's the harm if some guy enlarges Hawaii, just say 30%? I mean, there's no harm in that. So yeah, a very close observer of our stories from this point on, when they see the new map, Hawaii will just be slightly more prominent. We didn't make it Montana size, and don't get me wrong, it's just slightly larger, just in hopes of somehow getting a free trip to Hawaii.
Steve, how hard is it, like with visiting Gloria, to find what her story is? Most people, or a lot of people, I guess, would say, I don't have a story, but it seems like many have many stories. How do you find that story?
Well, Gloria, the woman that we found here in town in Ekalaka, she has several stories. I'm not sure which one we'll tell yet. But you're right, there are several things to choose from, and I haven't even talked to her family and her friends to figure out if maybe there's something else that she forgot to tell me or didn't think was important enough. I'll end up settling on something that I think, is powerful and is relatable, that people watching can see a little bit of themselves in that, and something that usually has a happy ending. It's just a fact of news that my stories come at the end, and people don't want to be left on a downer. And I don't want to come into a town and pick somebody at random who's minding their own business and expose dirty laundry. That's not what this is about. So we'll pick something that shows her good side. I make no apologies that in my stories I look for the good in people, because I think so much in news we focus on the bad in people.
You work with Les Rose and have for, I guess, a number of years. How important is it, that bond between yourself and Les the photographer?
It's probably more than I'm even able to realize, because we've worked together for so long, and he knows exactly, what I'm looking for. He's very good with people, makes them feel very comfortable. The guy's 6'6", but still somehow just can blend into the wall and people forget he's there, and they are themselves. Because the sound of it is very intimidating. A news crew's going to come into your house and tell your story to a national audience, but in reality, people tell us often that, that was so easy. It was just Steve and Les coming in and visiting with me, which is exactly how I want it to be. I want people to be themselves, and Les is very good at making people comfortable.
Something I'd like to touch on, too, that we've talked about your love for feature reporting, but on 9/11, you were put in a different position, weren't you? Could you tell us about that a little bit?
We were in northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati, Ohio, And we'd pick somebody at random out of the phone book, and it was that first day when we're just visiting with them and getting to know what their story might be, when Les came up to me. He'd seen something on the news, and he was just, I'd never seen him like that. He was short of breath, his face was white, and he said, you know, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center. And that changed our lives for the next week. You know, certainly changed our lives forever, but in terms of, you know, what we were doing, you know, our job, you know, we were no longer telling the story of that woman from northern Kentucky. We were on our way to the Pennsylvania crash site because nobody could get out of New York City, none of the correspondents. People in Washington were obviously very busy with what they were doing there, and we were the only crew around. So Steve and Les, the feature guys who, you know, who really never do hard news, are sent to cover a major crash. And in hindsight, one of the bigger stories of the day, those people that took over that plane. We didn't know that at the time. At the time, that story was kind of an afterthought. But in hindsight, you know, I'll always be able to tell my kids that, you know, I was part of that day.
Did you realize when you got into this that you could be changing people's lives by some of the pieces that you're doing? Obviously, you have.
As a feature reporter, you know, most feature reporters, you're covering the county fair or something like that, so you're not really changing lives. I've never really, and I never imagined that doing this kind of thing, picking people at random out of the phone book and telling their stories would have the impact on the subjects, the people's lives that it does. But it really does. It's amazing. Sometimes things will come up that they haven't told their best friends or their relatives. It's kind of you kind of have to be part psychologist a little bit to do what I do. And when all is said and done, we've had people tell us, you know, we had a couple married 50 years, and this woman, she hugs me goodbye. She goes, you know, we've been married 50 years, and this is the best thing that's ever happened to us. And just, I'll tell you a little bit about why she said that. It was a prodigal son kind of story. Her son had run away at 18, and he'd come back, but they never really talked about that whole thing. And the son said some things to us about how important his parents were to him, and it's the first time she'd heard some of those things. So it's really great to be a part of that kind of thing.
Going back to some of these people that you've talked to, do you run into a few that say, I really don't have a story, you're wasting your time?
Yeah, most people say that. When we came here to Ekalaka, we picked Gloria out of the phone book. She said the same thing. It used to scare me, too. It used to scare me when people said, you know, I don't have a story. Pick somebody else. I go, oh, well, even though we're not supposed to turn down anybody, and we never have, there's kind of a party that goes, well, I wish we could. But that doesn't bother me so much anymore because I know that there is a story there. And it's just a matter they don't recognize it. You asked me what my story would be, I wouldn't really know either. Because it takes somebody else to come in and sort of really get to know you and ask you lots of questions to find what it is. And there's always something there.
So you don't think you have a story?
Other than the fact that I travel the world at the whim of a dart, which is probably a pretty good story, which I imagine is why you sat me down here today. Other than that, I'm not sure what I would have that would be interesting to people.
Where do you expect to be in 5 or 10 years? Any idea?
I think I'd always like to be doing this. We've done this for 4 years now, and it hasn't gotten boring. It hasn't even gotten redundant in any way. You know, we've had a couple stories that dealt with Alzheimer's, but it's a different kind of twist, or you know, school teachers who have had a profound impact on their kids, but they're always different. So I think I'd like to still be doing this. And I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind, but it's weird to be at that point in your career where you're just kind of happy doing what you're doing.
What's it like living the life that you live? Obviously, you can't have much of a family life. You're flying from one end of the country, and I understand Oprah show you're involved with that. What's your life like?
Yeah, I'm doing Oprah next week. You beat her to the punch, you know. I think Oprah kind of follows what you do. You have somebody on, then Oprah wants to have them. I think that's kind of what's happening here. But no, getting back to your question, it's a hard life. Right? I mean, we fly a lot, and I'm not married, and I don't have kids. I think it would be very hard to have a family and do a good job at it, traveling, you know, as much as I do. Not impossible. Maybe someday I'll try that, but I think it'd be hard.
How do you know where you're going next?
The way this works is once we profile somebody and tell their story, they throw the dart for us, sending us to the next location. So it's kind of neat in that way, that it's kind of a never-ending little journey there where one person leads us to the next, and everybody's a little link in the chain.
Is it strange that if you say Steve Hartman from CBS, they're not real sure, and then you say the throw the dart,
Yes,
then
that's
they
what
know who
people
you are.
remember. That's what people remember. Yeah, nobody knows who Steve Hartman is.
But if you say, you know, I do the thing where we throw the dart at the map and pick somebody around on the phone, well, the dart thing, yeah, I know the dart thing. Yeah, it's strange to be known more for, you know, your dart than yourself.
Not selling anything. His dinner was getting cold. It has taken up to 44 calls before.
Finally, on the 14th stab.
Okay, that is Guy Leith.
All right.
So you're takers?
Sure.
Okay.
But finding a person is actually the easy part. The next challenge, finding a story, is usually the killer. Like when the dart led me to Fentress County, Tennessee. It was in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains where I finally met my match. Okay, I thought I could find a story in anyone. Piles, but I never planned on this.
Hello?
Trey, Piles answered, which meant I had to try and learn something about life from a 5-year-old.
Is it hard for...
What's this?
That's quite a talent.
This obviously wasn't going to be easy. Trey is just at that age where he can't sit still no matter where he is.
Mama, is almost over.
He has a like-minded brother, appropriately named Chase. A mom and dad who try and keep up. A mouth wide enough to hold a muffin the size of Montana. And most importantly, a heart that opens wider still. Every few weeks, Trey likes to give balloons to his grandma.
Thank you.
Of course, a lot of kids like to give their grandma presents. But what's special about Trey is that he still does.
After the funeral, he walked in a room and just started crying. And that was really hard for me, because they were really close.
Trey used to see his grandma almost every day. He was 2 when she died. And yet he clearly still remembers.
I never say, let's do this. It's always him saying, I want to give my mammy a balloon.
I asked Trey if he would show me how you give a balloon to someone who's not here anymore, and he obliged, but didn't take me to the cemetery.
Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
Because his way of thinking is, why tie it to a tombstone when she's not even there? Why not bring it up here and let her catch it? As Trey watched that balloon disappear into his grandma's arms, I realized that he did have something to say after all. That faith is where you find it. And there's a lot more to religion than just sitting up straight on Sundays.
Well, Steve, I know that you don't do this very often, and we appreciate you spending 30 minutes with us. I know that you're giving the viewers of all of the CBS stations in Montana on the Montana Television Network a rare glimpse at your life, and we appreciate you doing that, and of course you're always welcome back in Montana 6th, 7th, or 8th time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey, Fred, it's Steve Hartman calling. Sorry I'm so late in calling, but I wanted to tell you that we saw the tape and it was dynamite. You really did a great job. Show was great. Even the package was, Les and I were talking, it's one of the best ones that's been done about us. It was really good. You should be very proud of that. And I really certainly, appreciate you doing it. It's very nice and very professionally done. Just great. So hopefully we'll get to see you again. Hopefully not too soon, because we really do need to get out of the upper middle part of the country. We just did Nebraska, well, Utah, Nebraska, and now the darkness hit Iowa. So, to get my firstborn for New Jersey or something like that. But anyway, we'll see you again, I'm sure. And until then, you have a great holiday. Okay, bye, Fred.